And now, let's welcome our highly anticipated keynote speaker. PA Jeff Evans leaves no stone unturned when it comes to creative leadership. Jeff is an author, a mountaineer, and world-renowned adventurer whose stories and experiences will inspire you to connect with your own potential, each other, the world, and its possibilities. A practicing emergency medicine PA, Jeff has delivered care on the front lines of Iraq, led injured veterans on expeditions to Nepal, as well as the South Pole, and climbed the world's highest peaks. Let's welcome PA Evans.
Hey, my people, my family. Y'all, undoubtedly, this is one of the greatest honors and privileges of my career. Undoubtedly, in a way, it's like a culmination of everything I've ever done, standing here with you right now in this moment. So thank you for sharing this moment, because it can only go downhill from here. Such a privilege. Real quick, though, I just want to shout out to any of my Drexel, Hahnemann, MCP people. All right, I'll see you later. I also want to give a big thank you to the amazing staff that put together this event. I mean, they've done an amazing job from front to back. A few months ago, they came out to me and they said, hey, we'd love it if you would be the general session keynote speaker. And I said, heck yeah, I'm in. About 2 weeks later, they sent me this email and they say, well, we want to do this campaign to be able to promote the conference, and we'd love it if you'd be a part of it, by the way. And we're going to send you a little tiny stuffed animal in the mail, and we want you to carry around and take pictures of it. His name's Claudia. And I said, sure. So Claudia shows up in the mail a couple weeks later, and so I got into it. I took Claudia around from place to place. I took her skiing in the back bowls of Vail. I took her mountain biking in Slick Rock in Moab. She even helped me mow the yard in Colorado. But then she kind of got up in my personal space just a little bit. But in spite of that, I ended up taking her with me to Nepal. I just got back from Nepal like 10 days ago, and I took her trekking in the rainforest with me, and then trekking around in the Himalayas as well. And then she ended up stopping me up time and time again, asking to take selfies, so I accommodated. And then we got up into the big mountains of Nepal, around 19,000 feet. And then just a little over 2 weeks ago, she stood on top of a 21,000-foot peak with me in Nepal, in the Himalaya, with this grand view of all the Everest region. So Claudia and I, we've been through a few things. We've had quite a run. But I am sad to tell you that just a couple days ago, Claudia met somewhat of a fateful demise. I told that to the staff, and they were like, no! Just kidding. I've actually got her in the back. She's okay. No, but really, you guys are thinking to yourself, okay, well, this guy's a PA. That's cool. We've got that in similarity, right? I can relate to that. But this whole mountain climbing thing, I don't get that, right? A lot of people can't relate to the whole mountain climbing thing. So you're wondering to yourself, well, what is this guy going to come talk to me about that's going to have any relevance to my work as a PA? Okay, good question. So I've been a PA for almost 20 years now. It's been a long time. But I have been a mountain guide for over 25 years. And as a mountain guide, I take people up big mountains around the world. I try to get them to the summit, but most importantly, I try to not get them dead. It is one of the more important aspects of my job to not get people dead. Well, that being said, there are a lot of facets about being a guide. A lot of responsibilities with being a guide, right? Whether it's establishing expectations, it's communicating effectively, it's being transparent and honest, it's being a member of a multidimensional team, it's communication, it's trust. It's all of these characteristics that each one of you have to incorporate. I know who you are. I know your roles and your responsibilities. I know the venues that you practice in intimately. I get it, and therefore I understand this very clearly. You're a guide too. We are all guides. And no one personifies this idea of being a guide better than a group of people that you've heard of before called the Sherpas, right? So the Sherpas are legendarily strong. Everybody's all heard of the Sherpas before and how much work they do and how amazingly tough they are. And this is all very true. They do it all. I mean, they do everything from front to back. They set the ropes up the mountain. They cook the food. They get the camps up. They do it all. They do every single thing on the mountain except for carry you, and sometimes they do that. They do it all. So I just got back a few days ago from my 13th Himalayan expedition, and each one of them have been with Sherpas, specifically these 4 guys, specifically Appa, the guy over on the left. So here's a pretty typical scenario that's played out a lot of times in the Himalaya when I'm on trips with guys like Appa. So, I'll be on an expedition and I will want to just arrive at camp before Appa one time. Just get to camp before him once. That was my intention, right? So this is how it plays out. I'll sneak out of camp real quietly. A couple hours later, Appa will leave out of camp. And then a couple hours later, Appa will pass me by. Hello, Mr. Jeff. All right, and he'll get all the way back up there. And then a couple hours later, I get to camp. And there's Appa sitting on a rock. And I'm looking up at him. I'm like, man, Appa, if it's possible, man, I think you're even stronger this year than you were last year. No kidding you. Appa will look down at me and go, you're pretty strong too, Mr. Jeff. The pack of Marlboro Red butts at his feet. Super, super strong. Tough like you read about. Here it is in picture form, right? So I'm looking like a tough guy over here, right? I got all the best equipment money can buy, right? I got the nice down suit and the ceramic boots and the really sweet oxygen system and everything's top of the line, right? Check me out. Look at old Appa over here. Appa's got on a down jacket with duct tape on it and feathers flying out all over the place. He's carrying an oxygen bottle, but he's not even breathing it. He's carrying it for me. Best part about old Appa, he's got on blue jeans. And they're not even Levi's. They're like Jordache or something, You know what you realize real quick? Rock star, sissy. I ain't afraid to admit it. Really, truly, legendarily strong. So strong, in fact, that a bunch of smart people wanted to get together and figure out why it is. Maybe they're so much stronger than us because they live there. You hear that all the time. They live there, man. They're so much stronger than us because... All right, so some folks from Brown University and NASA got together and did a collective study, and they took some physiologic data, and they compared the Westerners to the Sherpas. And we're going to get to the bottom of this, right? So they did different data points, resting heart rate, hemoglobin, hematocrit concentration, pulse oximetry, all this kind of stuff. 12 points of data, compared it, Sherpas versus Westerners. I remember about a year after the study, I got it in the mail. This is back when you used to get things in the mail. And I remember getting it in the mail, and I remember opening it up in one of those big 350-page, studies that all of you students probably don't remember, but all of you older PAs do. You do what you do. You open up to the back and read the conclusion. Everybody knows that part, right? So in conclusion, there was no disparity or discrepancy between the values of the Sherpa population and the Western population, and then ... And therefore, in conclusion, our study is inconclusive. And I remember reading that thinking, that's funny, but that's not accurate. Because what you're telling me is actually the most accurate thing you can tell me. Because what you're telling me is that Appa goes to the playing field with the same gear I got. Not the same gear, but the same gear I got. He doesn't have some big super Sherpa S on his chest. He doesn't have gills. He can't breathe oxygen better than me. He's just a dude. He's just a guy who's going out and doing his job every single day. He's not focused on his own agenda, his own flag planting on the summit. He knows that there's something bigger than him out there. Now, I've done enough trips over there and hung out with these guys enough to know that I know what it is now, and it's not quantifiable. You can't put it on a study. There's no number. There's no numbers for it. What I know of it now is it's the Sherpa attitude. That's what I call it. It's the Sherpa attitude. It's going out and getting it done for the people around you. No complaining, no whining, just going out and doing it. Understanding there's something bigger than you out there. Another way that I've rephrased it is, and I perceive it, is being a servant leader. True servant leadership. Being of service to others first. Leading from a place that's centered around fostering the success of other people first. Whether it's your colleagues, whether it's your patients, your staff, the docs you work with, your family, all of these different teams and groups that you work with, but thinking of them first, nurturing them to help them identify their roles and their models and their routes up the mountain. There's a lot of different routes up the mountain, but helping them identifying to nurture them. The fact that you're in this room and you have chosen this profession shows that that's how you're wired. But I would encourage you to think of ways to continue to frame up your medical career and your personal life in this idea of looking left and looking right and understanding that the people around you can be elevated when you do put them first as a servant leader. So I'm old enough now to where I've worked with APA, and now I've gone through the next generation of Sherpas now, right? So now I'm working with APA's sons and nephews, and they're just as strong and powerful as their uncles and their daddies. But now, the only difference is they're on Facebook. These guys are tough like you read about, amazing. So a couple years ago, they put out this Facebook post, and they said, hey, you know what? We've got this issue where we're all up with our clients, and we're on these big mountains, and then ultimately something happens, and we have to go rescue people. And what we really want to do is establish the first dedicated search and rescue team on Mount Everest. But we need a few things. We need some helicopter pilots that are really, really worthy and capable and can fly around in 24,000 feet. Then we also need a medic to be in the back of the helicopter who knows Mount Everest and knows altitude medicine, is dumb enough to ride in the back of a helicopter 23,000 feet. And I was like, I'll do it. Turns out I should have asked my wife. That didn't go over so well, but I did it. I agreed. And in those 2 months that we were together, we did 38 rescue missions. We saved over a dozen lives, many, many of which were actually Sherpa and Nepali, not just the rich Westerners. And I can neither confirm nor deny that I may have, on one of the more bumpy rides at 23,000 feet, may have vomited into the lap of an unconscious patient. In reality, nobody can really prove it. But I'm just very proud to have been a part of the extension of these young Sherpa men finding another opportunity to be a servant leader to their community and to lift others up. So, hey, I ain't gonna lie to you. I had no idea what servant leadership was 25 years ago. I didn't know what it was. I was living what I thought was a pretty successful existence at the time. I think if you ask my mom and dad, I doubt they'd agree. I was living in my van down by the river. I was living in a place called Joshua Tree, California. And many of y'all probably know where that is. It's a special place, very, very special place. Lots of climbing everywhere, and I was living in my van, and I was as happy as I could be. I was rock climbing every single day, and I didn't have a nickel. This was way before PA school, and I was eating ramen noodles 3 times a day, and I was happy as I could be. And then through a fortuitous meeting, I heard about this blind guy, a blind guy named Eric. Now, Eric was born with a degenerative retina disease. He had retinoschisis. His retina's unraveled at the age of 13. It was lights out, and he went blind. But he found rock climbing to be this thing that he loved. And as a kid, he started to really sort of gravitate towards rock climbing. And then he wanted to start climbing big mountains. But he knew if he was going to climb big mountains, he was going to have a guide. And so he assembled this whole list of accomplished mountaineers, and he called them up one by one. He'd say, hey, my name's Eric, and I'm a rock climber, and I want to start climbing big mountains. And he'd give them the whole pitch, and then at the end he'd say, oh, by the way, I'm blind. And then he said everybody would say, oh, by the way, I got a dentist appointment. Nobody wanted to go climbing with the blind guy, right? Because nobody ever had. There was no playbook. There was no how-to, how not to. And somehow he gets a hold of me and he gives me the pitch. My name's Eric and I'm this and then at the end, I'm blind and I'm like, sweet, bro. I'm living in my van down by the river. Bring it on, man. So we make a deal. He's going to come out to Joshua Tree and meet me, and we're just going to go climbing for the day, just kind of get to know each other. So he comes out to Joshua Tree, and he gets out of the car, gets out of the passenger seat. And the first thing I notice about this guy, as well as being blind, he's by default, he's colorblind too, right? Now, I'm not a very stylish dude, but I said, my man, I am not going out in the mountains with you looking like that. We got to fix that. All right, so the very first day we're together, we go climbing. I didn't know how good of a climber this guy was. I had no idea. So I took him up easy routes, and he just crushed them, right? No problem. And so then, the day goes on, and progressively harder routes. And finally, the sun's going down, and I'm like, man, this guy, I can't get him to peel off the rock, right? I want him, he's got to fall at some point. So I take him on the hardest route I could get on. I get to the top, I'm pulling the rope up, belaying him up, and he just dances up it, no problem. Scans, moves, super strong, gets up, sits down next to me. I'm like, man, wow, dude, this is impressive, man. You're really great. This is a lot of potential here, And here I am talking about that. I was like, now the sun's gone down, let's get on down and get to the campfire and drink a beer and eat some ramen noodles, right? And no kidding you, blind dude looks me square in the eyes. He goes, do you think I care if the sun's gone down? And I did one of those like, you're kidding, right? He goes, no, seriously. Put your headlamp on and let's keep climbing. And I did. And we did. Till 2:30 in the morning, the very first day we were together. And I said, all right. This guy here, he is the man. He's walking the walk, right? He is walking the walk. He just needs an ally. He needs somebody that he can trust, but then, because trust what it is, in time, we'll learn to trust him. Now, get your head around that a little bit. Those are some of the questions I was fielding at the time when I was telling everybody, I'm going climbing with a blind guy. And everybody would be like, well, what happens if something happens to you? How's he going to get you out of there? And these were real issues. Well, that was 25 years ago. And in those 25 years, Eric and I have done a few things together. We've done a lot together. We've tried a lot of things. We've tried a lot of summits, and we have failed over and over and over again. Now, in climbing, though, the only real failure is one thing, if you know what I'm saying. So far, we're batting 1,000. Now, we haven't summited a lot of mountains, but each time we go out, we always try to stretch ourselves. We always try to do things that are hard, and we're not afraid to fall down, right? Because success is not final, and failure is not fatal. What's important is the courage to continue when you do fall down. And so over the course of the 25 years, we've tried a bunch of stuff, always trying to stretch ourselves. That's why it was a bit of a challenge when we got contacted by this guy named Mark Burnett. Now, Mark Burnett, he makes crappy television. Sorry for you folks that love Survivor and on, but whatever, He makes marginal TV. Let's just go with that. He reached out to us and he says, hey guys, I've got this race, and it's an adventure race, and it's going to be this great race. It's going to be in Morocco. It'll be 13 teams of 3, and you're going to do all these great climbing and rappelling and whitewater rafting, all these things you guys normally do, and it'll be a race, and the last team to cross the finish line after each of the 10 stages goes home. Okay, well, we're talking to him on the phone. Okay, well, that sounds pretty good. And he goes, of course, I'm Mark Burnett, so it's going to be on TV, and millions of people are going to watch it every week. And we're like, okay, talk to you later. And we hung up. And I looked at Eric, and I was like, there is no way. This is a terrible idea, man. Turns out, running around Morocco with a blind dude, a lot could go wrong on national TV. So we said, let's just give it a second. Let's talk about this. And so we went down, and where some good decisions and most bad decisions are made, which is the local bar. And we went down to the bar, and we sat down in Golden, Colorado, and we sat on a bar stool. And, at first we sat down, we're like, man, we were really going to look like fools. And then fast forward about 2 hours, if you know what I'm saying. We're in New Orleans. And we became transparent. We're like, listen, You know, 2 or 3 beers later, we're like, listen, if we don't do it, we'd be hypocrites if we don't do it. Because here we are talking about taking chances, man, and really like being together and not being afraid of failure. And here we are saying the one thing that's going to keep us from doing it is the fear of looking like fools. So we called Mark back up and we said, okay, we're doing it. And he goes, okay, great. Awesome. Pick your third teammate and we'll see you in Casablanca. So we pick our third teammate, this guy named Ike. We had met Ike on one of our programs that Eric and I started for injured veterans, where we take them around the world on big mountains, because we believe that's the venue where you can reestablish teamwork and fellowship and love and camaraderie. And we met Ike, and he's a decorated combat veteran. So we took Ike as our third teammate because he's the guy you want with you. And we head off to Casablanca. And we land in this hotel compound, and we're not allowed to talk to the other 12 teams because it's a race, and you can't talk to them until the race starts. So for 2 days, all the teams are walking around, and everybody's looking at everybody, you know, like checking everybody out, and, you know, and I'm going, oh, and Eric's like, dude, what did they tell me? What do you see, man? Give me some beta, right? And I'm like, well, okay, it's a made-for-TV race, so there's all these stereotypes. Over there's the Boston cops, and then over here's the New York City firemen over there. And then I saw these big dudes, these former NFL players. I'm like, big NFL, they're all like 6'4", all yoked up, you know, kind of walking. Eric's like, oh my gosh. I said, don't worry, bro, big tree, fall hard, it's cool. But then I realized all the teams are looking at us too. And here I am walking Eric to lunch, you know, and he's tripping over curbs and stuff. And we heard one of the teams say this.
So when we first realized that there was a guy in the competition who was blind, I felt like, awesome, one down.
I mean, I don't blame her, right? I mean, but footnote, second team to get booted off. Karma is wonderful, isn't it? Karma is wonderful. But hey, we knew we weren't going to be one of the fastest teams. We were one of the oldest teams, definitely one of the grayer teams, right? But what comes with age is wisdom, experience, right? The three of us, we were pretty well versed at miserable conditions, right? We were all pretty good at suffering. We knew how to suffer. We figured, boy, the dirtier, the nastier, the colder it is, the less food, the no showers. And sure enough, that's how it was, and we loved every minute of it. It was miserable. So all these weaker teams started to drop off. So we were doing pretty good. Well, when people recognize Eric and I, and they see us together, and they see him with his white stick, and they say, hey, man, I recognize you guys from that race on TV and stuff. They always come back to this one moment that happened about halfway through. And what I want to show you here is a 20-year relationship distilled down into about 90 seconds. All right, it's going to be about a, oh my God, it's like a 30-footer. What? Yeah, it's cool, it's cool. 30-footer, it's no problem though, dude. It's no problem, you will do this. Eric's been trusting me for close to 20 years now, you know. He's just been listening to what I'm saying. If I say, jump off this cliff, he knows I'm gonna lead him in the right way. I've got his best interest in mind. Chances are good that he's gonna live through it. He's just gotta trust me and jump at the same time. Over here, stand right next to me.
Left?
Yes.
Left, Ian?
Yes, don't knock me off, I'm right on the edge. No, on this side.
On your right.
Yeah, right there. Okay, we're good. That's the edge,
Okay.
You got it? Stand up, no, you gotta stand up.
What?
You gotta stand up and jump, you can't sit down. Hold on to me, just give me your hand, Ready? 1, 2, 3. Nice. Hey, you know what the best part about jumping off a 40-foot cliff with your blind buddy is? You can tell him it's 30 feet. What's he gonna do? Be like halfway through, be like, this is longer than you said, man. Even though my man has never seen this next image, he loves to point out that he's the guy going in with the perfect SEAL Team 6 form. I'm the guy doing some sort of kung fu move. But hey, that is not natural, right? It is absolutely not natural what happens right there, right? Because imagine, lights out. I mean, completely lights out dark. You're standing at the edge of this cliff. You can hear the river just rolling underneath you. Your buddy grabs you by the hand and says, I got you. Let's do this. and you do it. You jump out into that abyss. Imagine that. Imagine what that would be like. It's not a natural instinct. It's this level of trust that's super profound, and I find trust to be this amazing behavior and characteristic that really, truly, true trust, profound trust, it takes a long time to develop it. But you can lose it just like that. Right? True trust. It's not about words, it's about actions. I can walk up to any one of you right now and I can say, come on, let's go climb this mountain. Trust me. And you might say to yourself, okay, but do you really? No. It's because we haven't yet. We haven't climbed together yet. You have to have these shared experiences. All of you are a member of a multidimensional team. You have to develop that trust through action. Your colleagues, your peers, your patients, your superiors all have to see you in it. That's where true trust is developed. So, hey, we were doing pretty good on this race. Actually, everything was going pretty good, right? And then a fairly unexpected event happened to our third teammate, Ike.
Hey. Okay, let's go.
Let's go, let's go. I'll hop in the back seat this time.
Go, airport. On the way back, just, in spite of climbing mountains, running through rivers, I fell and snapped my ankle.
Once again, we did okay.
Airport.
We need to get the best way there, though, okay? No getting lost this time.
What's wrong?
Oh, man.
You took a digger at the door?
That same ankle that I broke.
Push this way into his head.
Here.
Push.
Vous avez mal ici?
They want to know if it's painful.
Yeah. This is a recurring injury. I originally injured it in Afghanistan, so my gut's telling me I may have rebroken it.
So he can't exclude a fracture either. He wants to do an X-ray.
I'm obviously concerned about my boy Ike. I hope that he's okay, but if I'm in Vegas and I'm a betting man, he's got a fracture.
Well, that's awesome because, now I got a blind dude on one side and a guy with a cast on the other. It's exactly how I had it all planned out, right? Ike is a 2-time Purple Heart recipient. He does get injured a fair bit. But he was an absolute stud, an absolute beast, and the fact that he did not give up as you would expect a Ranger to do. We continue to push on in spite of the adversity, and I tell you, adversity happens, right? Landscapes change. It always happens. It's guaranteed. Each one of you understand that's the atmosphere you work in. This always fluid, kinetic environment that every single day changes into something different. So I've obviously dealt with a fair bit of adversity in my climbing and my medical career, but what I typically try to do when things are going a little bit south is try to pull people together. Let's laugh a little bit, let's lighten the mood, and then we strategize and we figure out how to fix this issue. So this next clip was the very next morning after Ike got his cast put on.
Yeah, you got walking down, but you still see better than me.
You still walk better than him.
Yeah.
Together, the two of you, I could put together a whole man, I think. I could take parts of each one of you and make one dude.
Well, in spite of all the adversity and so forth, we still finished second in that race out of 13, which is pretty good. Well, thanks. Hey, it's still first place losers, but we were pretty happy. We were pretty happy with the fact that we stayed honest with each other. We stayed open and committed to each other in spite of the adversity and the things that kept coming up and punching us in the face. Because the adversity is guaranteed. It is going to happen. But it's how you manifest it. That's the important part. How you manifest this chaos that you're in. Why is it important? Because the people are watching. The other people that are in that environment are watching you as a leader, as a guide. They're looking to you with their finger on your pulse to see how you react in these places that are super chaotic and unknown and ambiguous. So speaking of chaos, I just returned from easily the most chaotic place that I have just last spring, about 10, 11 months ago, from the lovely city of Mosul, Iraq, which several of you in this room know oh so well. I have volunteered. I had the privilege over the years of volunteering with a couple NGOs, one NGO in particular, And oftentimes we'll go to disaster sites, places like Vanuatu, Haiti, and then we also deployed over to Nepal after the earthquake with a fellow PA, Mary, who's somewhere in this crowd out here. We all go to these places because we have these skill sets. All of us, you, us. We go do these things because we have these skill sets that are super valuable. So last year, the World Health Organization came to this NGO and they said, hey, we've got this request. We have had a request for the Iraqi Special Operations Forces for you to go embed with them. Now, our guys and gals are back behind making sure everything's going right, but we're going to embed with the Iraqi Special Operations. And as the head of the NGO continued to explain it to me, and he said, it's going to be a little heady. You're going to be in the middle of it, right? You'll be close to the front lines as these guys push forward and try to eradicate ISIS out of West Mosul. And I said, well, how close? And he goes, well, about 2,500 meters is about the buffer. And I was like, sweet, I'm in. Turns out I should have asked my wife. That conversation didn't go over too well. But I went. And I was in charge of 8 other people, a team of 9. And what we would do is basically go follow the ISOF guys around as they took the fight into central city Mosul. And we would take care of them when they got hurt. They just don't have the medical training with their infrastructure. So fairly intense. We moved forward. At one point, about 3 weeks in, they said the General Abbas came to us, the ISOF guys, and he says, we have got a request. We're about to make a major offensive push into the center city, and we'd like for you to move forward with us. And I said, what does that mean? How far are we going to be? And he goes, about 500 meters from the front line. I'm like, okay, well, if you guys feel like this is the important thing to do, yes, let's do it. So we ended up moving forward, 500 meters behind. Day 1 goes by, day 2, 3. On the 4th day, turns out a sleeper cell guy had snuck in through their security and gone down a few houses down and was releasing pigeons to be able to alert these guys on the other side where we were. So about 8 o'clock in the morning, a mortar came in and it landed about 100 feet from a blown out building that we were basically working in with our trauma bays. We had 6 trauma beds set up. And we knew that this was a different sound. Many of you understand this sound, not the outgoing, but the incoming. And it landed about 100 feet away. We all kind of went, okay, that's interesting. About 10 minutes later, turns out, we didn't know this, another pigeon goes up. And it was about 75 feet away. And then about 20 minutes later, one landed right on the road, right outside, and blew the doors off of our trauma bay and knocked everybody down. And we went in. About 30 seconds later, they brought in one of our heads of security and all crying and yelling and laid him on the table, lifeless. And I don't normally tell this story, but to you I can. We were in this bunker, and I wasn't going to ask anybody to do basically anything that I wasn't willing to do. And so I stepped out, and all the other 8 stepped out with me. And we moved forward, and we realized that this young man, I saw a penetrating wound up in his chest, his right upper chest. And so I put a chest tube in him and drained out almost a liter of blood. Boom. And he was almost like Uma Thurman on Pulp Fiction, just, he sat up. We threw him in the back of an ambulance. We got him out. About 3 hours later, they got us out of there in the back of some Humvees. I got home, and things were a little bit weird for a while. Fortunately, I have a lot of military friends, and we talked about a lot of stuff. And I learned a few things. Number 1, in its current condition, Mosul, Iraq is not what I would recommend as a family vacation destination. Number 2, most importantly, the profound respect I have for the men and women that serve our country, especially combat medics that put themselves out there every single day, is absolutely elevated to the point where I can't even tell you. And I feel like all of us should right now acknowledge the fact that our profession, our career came from these men and women who serve our country. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So then another thing happens. So then I learned that it turns out I gravitate towards these chaotic environments. Who would have thunk? So I got home and I started thinking about this, man. And so I went down the Google hole. Why do I always end up in these places, flying around in helicopters and taking blind dudes up big mountains and doing all these crazy things, right? There's got to be something. So I landed on this acronym called VUCA. VUCA, and some of you have probably heard it before. It was established by the American Military Academy about 50 years ago to prepare their soon-to-be graduates for this kinetic world we live in. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. VUCA. And I said, boom, that's it. I need to know more. I need to know more about how to optimize my efforts when things are sideways, because guarantee it, they will be. And I learned a few things. Learning, engaging, studying, adapting, acknowledging. All of these things kind of come out, right? Focusing on the things that you can do as opposed to the things that you can't. Focusing on the resources that you have and not the things that you don't. Austere medicine will teach you a few things, and one of them is you got to use what you got where you are. But you've got the most important skill and resource of all of you with your training is this, your heart and your brain. It's right there. But working in these VUCA environments, it's guaranteed that all of us, everyone, you've chosen to be here, you're going to operate in that environment. So understanding that people are watching when things go south. They truly are watching to see how you react, how you manifest your reaction to this sideways moment that you're in the middle of. So the ones that hurt the most, the ones that really kick you around the most, are the ones that happen when you're not ready. So this shot illustrates that. So this picture right here was taken on an 8,000 meter peak called Lhotse. This is about 25,000 feet. My buddy Charlie took this picture of me with the white pack on right there. About 30 seconds later, he took this picture. And you can see it coming, right? There it is. That's 26,000 feet. It's coming over the top, and then boom, it's right on top of you. And I remember that day. I remember that day real clear. When you go on these big expeditions, you pay a lot of money to these weather forecasters, right? All these guys who consolidate all of this weather forecasting modeling and so forth, and then they tell you, okay, this day's a go day. This day's not a go day. And this day's a go day. This day was a go day. And I remember it. We were moving. And there it was, boom, right on top of us. And I remember throwing a fit. We paid this guy a bunch of money. He's sitting over there in his office in his bathrobe, drinking his coffee, telling us to go. And we just got out here and get our butts kicked on. And I'm throwing a fit. And I know now how foolish that was. I learned something big that day, because you know what? You know how bad it is for me right here. You know what my best friend sees? You know what the guy who needs me the most sees? He sees this. And boy, that's a whole lot worse than that. This is his optic right here. The guy who needs me when it is going south, that's what he sees. And I have to remind myself that as a guide, as a leader, as a PA, I have to remind myself that that's who needs me. The people, when we see them, typically, they're scared. They're fearful. They don't know what's coming up. And it's our job to be able to give them the information they need, to be transparent, but to stand up, not to be cocky and arrogant, but to understand that we have a situation. It's not exactly as we planned, but we will figure this out. We will get through this. In those environments, working in those environments and optimizing our efforts and our skills when things are going bad. Now, when I think about the places that I've operated, probably the project with the highest level of VUCA in it that I volunteered for was when I started talking with Eric about climbing the biggest mountain in the world. So Eric and I had done a bunch of climbs all the way up until 2000. We'd done what's called the seven summits. Well, we'd done 6 of them. It was at that point, it was a very small, contrived little group of people who climbed each of the highest points on each of the 7 continents. Right? So we climbed all these mountains, and then we were left with one. And this was back when Everest was very, very raw. It was not nearly as commercialized as it is now, back in 2001. So we said, okay, well, let's consider this. Well, what would it be like for a blind guy to go up? We had no idea. Once again, no playbook, no template. It is what it is. We're just going to have to go out and figure it out. But we knew the most critical piece of whether we were going to succeed or fail was going to be based on one thing. And that's who we put on our team. Who we put on our team. We were just trying to get not the best, most skilled alpinists in the country. We weren't trying to get that kind of person. I live in Colorado. I'm not even the best climber on my block in Colorado. Seriously. But what we wanted was to put together a group of guys who very clearly adopted the servant leadership principle, who all had that Sherpa attitude, who all understood one very important concept, and that's when you are on a mountain, you are connected by a rope. You are inextricably connected. You're going to win together. You're going to lose together. But whatever happens, you are connected by a rope. A rope, this really wonderful thing that's this really sort of an inanimate object that just kind of sits coiled off in the corner somewhere. And then you connect it to people, and it becomes real. It becomes a living thing where you're going to win together, lose together, inextricably connected. You are together. So I come from the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Lenore, North Carolina is where I was born and was raised in Roanoke, Virginia. So I come from the South, up in the hills a fair bit. My family still doesn't really know what I do for a living. So my dad comes to me a few years ago, and my dad goes, son, I think I figured out why it is that y'all put that rope on you. And I said, why, Dad? And he said, I think it's to keep the smart ones from turning around and running home. But let me tell you a story. Oftentimes, as the guide, I'm in the front, right? This picture was from about 2 weeks ago. And I'm the guy in the front as the guide. We're going up. This scenario has played out many times where I'm doing okay. Everybody's doing okay. You know, it's middle of the day. It's blue sky. Everything's good. You know, good weather. My legs are feeling strong. My lungs are filling up. Everything's going along pretty good. Now, somebody all the way in the back of that rope, they had a lousy night. For whatever reason, they couldn't get it going. The motor wouldn't start. And then eventually, a few hours later, boom, they fall. And then one by one, doop, 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 doop. And I'm up here having a great day. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm yanked off my feet. And then all of a sudden, all I can see is sky and snow and sky and snow and sky and snow. And a bunch of really sharp things flying around in front of my face. And that's happened many times. Well, maybe Dad's right after all. But let me tell you, as recently as 3 years ago, I was in Alaska with a couple of my buddies. And we had taken off from work, and we had paid all this money. We landed on the glacier, and we were climbing some pretty spicy terrain. Day 4, day 5, I was tired. There was 3 of us on the rope. I was the last person on the rope. And we were climbing up. And before I could even get the scream out of my throat, I was in the air, falling. And then the next sensation I felt was, boom, was the rope going taut. And I knew that was pulling my buddy Diedrich off the rock. And then a microsecond later, boom, another pull. And that was Luis getting pulled off the rock. And I could think to myself right there at that moment, I said, I've just killed 2 of my very best friends. Then the next sensation I felt was the rope going completely tight and boom, no contribution from me. I did nothing. I was worthless. They caught me. And I wouldn't be standing here right now if it weren't for them. I'm going to be the guy first on the rope, no doubt, a lot. But I'm also going to be the guy in the back of the rope, undoubtedly, more times than I care to admit. And every single person in between, and so are you. The fact that you're here in this room means you are a guide, you're a leader, you're in the front. But there are some days, and you know them oh so well, that there are days you wake up, and I don't care how many Rockstar energy drinks you go through, man, you are not getting the motor going. You just can't get it going no matter what, and then boom, you fall. And boy, then it makes sense. Then the rope makes sense, right, Dad? Because that's the way the rope team works. I encourage you to think about the rope teams that you're on. All of you, when you leave this conference, you go back. You're on a lot of rope teams. And as a PA, this member of such a critical piece of this whole puzzle that fits together, and understanding how the rope team spoke out and how to really, truly enhance the experiences and skill sets of all the people that are really on all of your rope teams, and then take it further to your personal rope teams that you go home to every single night. Those rope teams, they mean so much, and develop them and nurture them to be the best that they can. So once that we had put together the rope team that we wanted, we ended up getting over to Nepal and starting up Everest. You know, the first order of business right now, right out of base camp on Everest, is this place called the Ice Fall. And the Ice Fall is a very diabolical place, to say the least. It is a 3,000-foot glacier as it gets squeezed between the west shoulder of Everest on one side and the east face of Nuptse on another side. It moves at an average of 1 meter a day, 3 feet a day, crushing, exploding, falling down. Over 50 people have been killed in this one area alone on Mount Everest. It turns into these big, nasty features, big, huge, tall ice blocks called seracs, some of them 300 or 400 foot tall. Then it also turns into these big features called crevasses. Some of them are really wide, some of them are narrow, some of them are shallow, some of them are like this one right here. The Sherpas say if you fall down into one like that, you end up back in New Orleans. Bottomless pits. Took me 15 hours to get Eric through the very first time I took him through. 15 hours. And he kept saying the whole time, he's like, bro, this place does not suit the Americans with Disabilities Act at all. Jumbled up mess. 15 hours of feeling like we were hunted every single minute. Now, how did I get Eric across some of those big, huge crevasses? I'd get him on the ladders just like the rest of us, and he'd hold on and he'd walk across. But how did I get him across some of the crevasses that didn't have ladders? The 4 and 5 and 6 foot ones. Well, I'd tell him to jump. I'd get him up to the edge of it. I'd hold the rope like I'm doing right there, and I'd get him to the edge, and he'd feel across with his antenna. And then I'd say, all right, man, 3 steps back, and let it rip. And listen, bro, stick the landing. Don't come up short. And he did, over and over and over and over again. 10 times through the ice fall. That's where the trust is developed. Now you see how that whole cliff jumping thing happens, right? Because that's where trust is developed. It's bandwidth. It's time in it. It's sweat equity. It's looking left and looking right and seeing, yep, they're in it. They're committed. I'm with them. I'm going to charge hard with them. So once we got done with that stinking ice fall, then you move up to this place called the South Col. Now the South Col is this pretty nasty place. It's where everything starts to conspire against you. Everything falls apart, basically. Your body starts to truly cannibalize yourself. We got up at this point, we'd been going 2 months. I had lost 45 pounds. All of us were beat up, we were tired, we were really ready to be done. But you get up here in 26,000 feet, 8,000 meters, and your body really starts to sabotage itself, right? You go through all these conditions because of hypoxia. So you get haste, you get cerebral edema, your brain fills up with fluid, you make all these bad decisions, you get this screaming headache, then you get pulmonary edema, right? You basically are drowning, then you lose your thirst mechanism, you lose your appetite, any food you do eat, you can't assimilate any nutrition from it. So it's a really awesome place to spend a spring break. So you get up there and you're like, you really want to limit your exposure. But here we are, we didn't know what to do, so here we had a blind dude, right? What are we going to do? There was no playbook, right? So we get up there and, we all come together as a team. Now, there's 19 of us with all our Sherpas at this point. We all come together and we have this meeting. One strategy we typically employ on these big mountains is basically we know we're going to encounter an issue, a problem on summit night, so we like to send somebody out in front to be able to mitigate that problem. We oftentimes call that person the avalanche poodle. That evening we all came together, and I had been weak, I'd been tired, I'd not been feeling good. All of us had gone through these periods of just being really worn down and sick and so forth. Well, we get there, and I was feeling good. 26,000 feet, I was feeling good. So we're like, who wants to be the avalanche poodle? I'm like, sweet, I'll do it. Turns out, no, I wasn't married at the time. But I said, okay, I'll do it. And so the alarms go off at 8 p.m. 9 p.m., we're out the tent door. And boom, out into it. And, the weather was bad, but we kept going. I'm passing each one of my buddies. You good? Yep, you good? Yep, you good? And I'm in front of 19 people. I'm in front. And then I'm an hour in front of everybody. And then I'm 2 hours in front of everybody, standing higher than any other human on the planet. And I watched as the sun came up over into Tibet, from Tibet, and cast the light over top of us, and we were all re-energized, and everything was going pretty good. We'd been climbing up this slope, this beautiful slope, the kind of terrain that Eric loves. It's 50, 60 degree snow and ice. He goes the same pace as the rest of us, lockstep. It's all pretty good. Well, as the person out front, I'd been following this rope. Now, I didn't need the rope to be there to know which way to go. It dropped off on both sides. There was only one way to go. But I needed that rope, not for the ascent, but I needed that rope to be there for the descent. Oftentimes what happens in mountaineering, big mountains like this, the weather always comes in around 11, noon or so, and then the visibility drops, and then it's the blind leading the blind. And I couldn't have that as an option. So I saw that the rope was going up I knew it had to be there for the descent. And I saw that it stopped. And it took me a minute. I remember kneeling down and I remember looking for a minute and trying to figure it out. And I saw that it did two things. It went out to the left about 40 or 50 feet or so, and then it went up about several hundred feet up to the south summit. But it went up through this band of nasty, broken up, chossy rock, shaly stuff, kind of stuff that Eric hates. He takes 2 steps up and 1 step back. So I knew that was bad for him. Then I saw the rope did a second thing. Option 2 was right in front of me, and it went up the same terrain, right up in front of me. The only problem is it was packed under a foot or 2 foot of snow, and if I was going to get that rope free, I was going to have to dig it free. And I knew digging rope free, it's 28,000 feet, I was going to be done. So there it was. There was my moment. There was my moment right there. I know now in my rearview mirror that was one of the greatest moments of my life. I didn't know it then, but I knew it now. I know it now. I can go the easy way for me, hard way for Eric. Or I can start digging those ropes out, easy way for Eric, and I'm done. That was my leadership moment. That was the moment to decide who I was going to be. Now, y'all can go to Barnes & Noble. You can go to any of these bookstores, and you can get a million different leadership books, and they're all great. They all say the same kind of stuff, and they're all good. But for me, I can distill it down into one basic principle for me, and that is it's one who shows your team your level of commitment by action, by doing it. Not talking about it, but by doing it. And so I started digging. I chopped at those ropes for 2 hours. I would dig a little bit, and I'd pull a little bit, and a bunch of snow and ice would fall down, and then I'd chop a little bit more, and a bunch of snow and ice would fall down. And I got all the way up to the south summit 2 hours later, and my teammates came up one by one. And finally, Eric comes up to me. He goes, "Man, I'd ask you what you've been doing for the past 2 hours, but you've been pelting me with snow and ice, so thanks. Now let's get going. Let's go knock this thing out." And I'd already done an inventory, and just as I expected, done. I was out. I didn't have anything left, and I told him that. And he said, "Man, he knew at that moment. I had stood with him on every single big mountain, every summit that he'd ever stood on. I'd stood right next to him. And here was the biggest one of all, and he knew exactly how it had gone down." And I said, go knock this thing out. Go finish it. And we hugged, and we cried, and our tears froze to our cheeks. And I watched as my best friend, who happened to be blind, lowered down off the south summit with Luis and started to walk across to the top of the world. And I looked over, and I was not sad. I was not disappointed. Matter of fact, my heart was full. I was happy because I knew that every single person had stepped up on that team at some point. Every single person had carried more weight than they were supposed to, and it helped somebody else. And here was this moment, and I was about to watch Eric go stand on top of the world. And then I looked over to my left and I saw this. And this is a 1999 Nikon camera out of my back pocket. And that's why it's a grainy photo. But I can tell you what it is. It's the summit. The sun has come up in Tibet and it's cast a shadow of the summit pyramid of Mount Everest down onto the valley floor. And at that very moment, the moon has just hung itself right above that shadow. And other than the birth of my little boy, hands down the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. So I saw that over to my left. And I saw this blind dude about to go stand on top of the world to the right, and I was like, okay. You should consider this. All right, well, you should really think about it. Are you going to be able to get to the top? Yeah. Are you going to be able to get down? Probably not. Oh, that's not a good answer. No. So this is the dialogue I'm having in my head, right? I'm like, oh, man, I don't know. Well, if you're going to do it. You should come up with some sort of mantra you can say, keep yourself focused, right? Some sort of mantra. You better make it short. Make it 2 words. How about don't fall? Good, don't fall it is. Because this is what I was looking at, right? I was standing right at that point right there. And it was a 10,000-foot drop into Tibet to the right, and it was a 6,000-foot drop into Nepal to the left, either way. Convinced it probably hurt pretty bad. And if I said don't fall once, I bet you I said it 10 million times as I walked across that ridge. And then 2 hours later, I was standing on top of the world with a blind dude. And thank you. But we got up there and we're talking about the curvature of the earth, and you know the first thing Eric says? Dude, the view is just overrated, man. And we're like, man, it's so beautiful. I don't care. Let's get out of here. We spent 20 minutes on top. 20 minutes. Took us 2.5 months to do it. 20 minutes on top. You do the math, right? Cuckoo. I didn't learn one thing in those 20 minutes. Not one single thing. But boy, did I learn a whole lot about a whole lot of things. I learned about how to be a leader, how to be a guide, how to sacrifice, how to be a servant leader, how to be of service to other people, how to be a part of something that was bigger than me. I learned all those things, but I didn't learn any of it standing on the top in those 20 minutes because I learned it on the flanks of the mountain. Life doesn't take place on the summit. Life takes place on the side of the mountain. That's where it happens every single day. That's where we fall down. That's where we make mistakes. That's where we stand back up and we brush ourselves off and we re-engage and we align ourselves again. Life takes place on the side of the mountain. That's where we optimize our efforts so that when we do get those few precious moments, those few precious summits in our lives, professionally and personally, that we're as good as we can possibly be. So we couldn't really celebrate till we got back down. We realized we did a few things. We got the first blind guy to the top of the world. I'm pretty much sure that record will never be broken because there's no other dumb enough blind dudes in the world. But the record that all of us are the most proud of, Eric, myself, all of us, is that we had 19 from one team in one day. Previous record was 9. I can't see how that'll be beat ever again. And the reason is because now Everest is super commercialized and there's all these teams that show up, right? And they pay all this money and they get over there and they're like, hey, my name's Jeff, I'm a member of your team and this is gonna be great. And then fast forward 2 months and it's going on Everest right now as we speak. And then, somebody's really tired and they have to lay down and they need help and they're reaching up and the guy's like, sorry man, I paid a lot of money. Good luck. Those are not teams. Those are loose confederations of people who do not care about each other. 19 from one team in one day. I don't know if that record will ever be broken because it was a true testament to us of what it means to have a group of people who truly, truly, honestly, sincerely care about the other person's welfare and their trajectory. So I leave you with this. There's a lot of big mountains out there. I am so proud to be a part of your family. We are family. We are a part of something. You are a leader. You are a guide. The onus is on you to be that leader, to be that servant leader, to think of ways to continue to be of service to other people, to dig the ropes out when they are buried, to step up to the edge of that cliff with your colleagues, with your patients, and take the hand and take that jump. I'm proud to be a part of you and all of you as part of my family. So thank you very much and continued success to all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hold on. Yeah. Yeah. This is the present and future of medicine right here. 3,000 PAs, and I'm proud to be a part of you. Woo! You guys are awesome. Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the AAPA 2018 General Session. Now let's continue the world's largest PA conference. And we look forward to seeing you next year in Denver.